From NMU Athletics, I'm Kobe Manzo, joined today by our head men's basketball coach, Majkrzak. Coach, thanks for joining me, man. This is sweet.
Yeah, this is awesome. Just another cool thing in a series of cool things we've been doing. So
yeah, we're on kind of a streak right now at Northern Michigan, a very good one. We're here to talk about one of the big events, obviously. Superior Dome Showdown, Michigan State basketball comes up, plays you guys in the game that, I mean, so many people have probably chatted about for decades at this point. The fact that it is actually now a reality, but also we can look back retroactively at it, is pretty special. I mean, just overall impressions from that. I think where we need to start is when you first got news that this could even be a possibility, what was your initial reaction?
yeah, I think there's been kind of rumors for the 5 years I've been here, and early on in my first year, Michigan State put out a tweet and said, what's next? We've done the aircraft carrier, we've done that, and there was someone said the Superior Dome, and I kind of went, oh yeah, right, like they're going to come up here and play in the Superior Dome. And our Keel was our assistant at the time and still is. He tweeted out from the Northern Michigan basketball account something basically like, we'd love to have you. And didn't hear a lot, and then fast forward a year or two later, and Kevin Paga, who's one of their assistant athletic directors, reached out to me and said, hey, this is something that we are open to. Are you guys open to it? And we're like, absolutely. Whatever we need to do to pull it off, we're in. And I think, thankfully, it didn't happen right away.
Yes.
Because I think the timing of it worked out so well. Mm-hmm. So there was another, year or two, and obviously got approached this summer with, hey, I think we want to do this. We got to make sure logistically we can pull it off. But so yeah, that's kind of how it went.
And then you have those talking stages, if you will, which sounds funny in that aspect, but really is what it is, feeling each other out and trying to get a sense of where the other party, the other school is at. At that point in time, is it at all hard to keep that contained and in-house as you kind of move forward with those next steps?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think you kind of want to tell people about it.
Oh, absolutely.
But you don't want to say, hey, we're going to do this and then have it not happen. And, now that it happened, it seems like, oh yeah, that was easy. But like, I didn't know if we could pull this off. And I didn't know we could pull it off, certainly to the extent we did, but I didn't even know if we could pull it off, period. And so there was part of me that's like, I'm glad we're talking about this, but there's probably not going to be able to do it this year, even though we're trying to. And, again, it's easier to admit that now because I think it came off almost flawlessly, which, again, I don't know if anybody, if they were being truthful, would say that they thought it would go as well as it did.
And I think that's what's really cool about the event is from an outside perspective, as someone who obviously followed both teams, maybe follows both teams currently, showed up to the game, was in venue, or even just watched the broadcast on Big Ten Network. From their perspective, I mean, this thing was tightly buttoned up, like very smooth operation, wire-to-wire type, like really well operated. Now, we know there was a lot that went on behind the scenes of that. Talk about some of the challenges. Obviously, there's a ton from the administrator side of things, event operations deal, but from your perspective, what were some of the biggest hurdles or challenges to get something like this really in the books?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best part about this now that we're through it, and I think it's related to what you're asking in the start of it, is as a Division II institution, I can't name another Division II institution that pulled off an event of this scope and scale. Not just the 11,500 people, but also having the Big Ten Network come up and the way the arena or the stadium became an arena. Yes. It's not an arena; it's a stadium, but it became an arena. And visually how it looked and how it was presented on TV. I think it's going to give everybody a lot of confidence at Northern going forward, knowing we could pull this off. It makes everything else that we have to pull off that at times seem daunting, maybe seem a little less daunting, knowing we could pull something like this off.
That's a good point.
But in the moments leading up to it, I mean, it was the simple things like how do we get bleachers? Like, what are we going to do for bleachers? Are you even going to be able to see the action on a basketball floor from the dome bleachers, which the views were awesome.
Turned out there wasn't a nosebleed in the house. And that was something that we noticed right away. Gavin and I walking up on the bleachers, and we're at the very top of the general admission, quote unquote, and we're like, this is a great place to watch a basketball game. This is not, people think Lucas Oil sitting up in the rafters with binoculars trying to just track the ball. I mean, there wasn't a seat in the house that was quote-unquote bad seat, and now you look back at it, again, retrospectively, and the largest indoor event in the history of the Upper Peninsula, I think the previous was President Bush, I want to say, inside the Dome, which, funny, obviously that same venue, which you talk about why most institutions have not been able to pull this off. Having the venue in place to do it is obviously a huge part of that. But now you get through that process. You're starting to figure out some of those details. And now we're starting to go from, okay, yeah, this would be really cool if we pulled this off, to now, holy, you know what, there's a real chance this could happen. Mm-hmm. What was that shift like from you guys, and how did you see that in this department? And then, kind of fast forwarding, that official yes, which took forever.
Yeah.
But that official yes, where were you at when you got that news?
The official yes, I found out because I walked down into the athletic offices, and I think Rick said, "Hey, come in here," and I'm like, "Well, this is good or bad." Whatever he says, "Come in here," it's something. So he's like, "We're doing this." He's like, "It's not, the contracts aren't signed, but we're doing this." And at that point, I felt it had been far enough along. I thought the yes was coming. Mm-hmm. I think at that point, as a group, athletics, I'll say, and probably the university as a whole, I think there was a sense of excitement, but there was also a little sense of panic of, okay, we're doing this. We got the yes. We pitched it well enough that it's a yes.
Yes. We
have to now do it. Yeah. And, I truly believe it's about coaching. If you're a little scared of your opponent, it's good. Like, I think there's a lot of you don't want to be scared. You don't want to, I don't know. I think if you have a little fear, that fear gives you a little adrenaline boost. And I think overall our kind of fear of, we don't want to let people down. We don't want to.
There's an ultimatum, right? Yeah.
And we knew it was going to be huge one way or another. So it was going to be this huge success story or this huge not success story. And again, I can say all that in hindsight because it was a success story. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be doing this, or we certainly would have a different tone to the conversation. But I also think, and without going through and thanking everyone, because I saw how long that took, I do think Rick's leadership, winning a national title at Division I hockey at Northern Michigan is not normal.
No.
Nor is hosting this event normal. And I think, normal people don't get to pull off abnormal things.
Yeah.
And the fact that, Rick's not normal in the sense of he's accomplished things that other people have never done, that we needed that. We needed that level of confidence and competence in that position to have this happen at the scope and scale it did.
No, that's really well said. I like that. And going back to your kind of your fear piece, which I think is really neat. I think I take that to my professional life as well when it comes to being creative and taking on different projects and roles. There are a lot of times, and I'm sure in your life you've done the same, where I've committed to and said yes to a project, to a role, to some type of task, not very well knowing if I could actually pull that off in the moment. But now, again, setting that up and maybe giving yourself that motivation and that setup to go out and have to accomplish and overcome something is a very valuable and very good motivating piece, which I think is another really kind of unspoken part of that. So now we fast forward to kind of the week of, and the turf was the story. We have to roll the turf up. For those not familiar, turf in the Superior Dome rolls up on a machine. It's not a permanent turf. So we have to roll up the turf to get the court down, and that turned out obviously to be not as smooth as possible. The work from the facilities, obviously putting in some overnight shifts to make sure everything went according to plan. But that 12 to 24 hours right there, where there really was okay, now if this doesn't happen, what the heck are we going to do? What was the limbo time like for you guys, and just trying to, get all the certainties planned out?
Yeah, so I remember this is what dumb people do, and this is what I did. I remember saying I'm gonna feel really good. There was the volleyball game Thursday night. I'm gonna feel really good going to the volleyball game. I'm gonna get my bucket of popcorn. I'm gonna watch volleyball. By then the court will be down. And once the court's down, we know we're going to play.
Yep.
And so on Wednesday, I started saying, I'm going to feel really good Thursday night. which I'll take 100% of the blame, because, of course, if you say that, what has to happen because of the way the world works is disaster. So the turf, it doesn't roll up. The new turf's beautiful, and it's because it's thicker and because it's higher quality and because it's better. They needed to lay it out. They needed to let it rest, and then they needed to roll it up. They'd never done it before. Obviously, that led to a lot of issues. A lot of times if you talk to players that played college sports, they talk about, I don't remember the championship game. I remember, puking my freshman year after coach screamed at us. Yeah. And I think the night of the Thursday night of the turf for me will be up there with any of the memories. Like, you have the walking out and seeing 11,500 people. You have all the interactions with Coach Izzo that were special. I'll remember equally well sitting on one of those like push carts, and it's Gavin Leach and Jeff Corpy and Rick and Brandon. It was a beehive. And and it's everyone everyone's working. Like, everyone's there.
Absolutely.
And the facilities people are working, and we're all sitting there looking around. Like, the unspoken thing is like, what are we gonna do? Like, we put in all this work, but this is bad.
Yeah.
And everyone just kept working, kept powering through it. And then, the next morning, everyone's up till 1, 2 in the morning. Everyone shows back up at 5, 6 in the morning, and it's done. So pretty cool. And I'll remember that as much as I'll remember any parts of the game.
Yeah. And the stuff that, like, I went back and forth on whether we should even talk about that, but I just thought it was worth highlighting, because obviously people outside of this building and this university have no idea.
Yeah.
Maybe potentially of what goes into that. And just like you said, it really was it felt at least like a borderline miracle.
Yeah. And I think, like, we as a staff talked after the weekend, and, you try to theme some stuff, and the brilliance of all these brilliant people, I thought was a theme for me, like Bill Rafferty and, Tom Izzo and, that, like, Steve Shear, who produced it. Like, all these people were so good, and we learned so much from them. But equally was our level of brilliance, being able to come up with solutions for things over and over and over again and fix problems. And I do think that, the night of the turf and the night till 2 in the morning, and I mean, it just shows what makes Northern special. And so I do think it's as important part of the story to me as any of it, because that's what makes this place special.
I agree. And then you get that done, and just in time, right? Because now we go over to Friday. You guys have first practice slated on the court in the Dome. We'll talk about that in a minute. But you've got Izzo and company flying in, too, because they talked about busing up here and him wanting to give them the authentic experience, but then just timetables and schedules maybe didn't allow for that. So let's talk about the practice first. First impressions for you guys walking onto the floor. We got to hear from Brian and Dylan a little bit at that practice. We got them for some interviews, but what were the impressions like from those guys, just seeing the setup? Granted, without a single person in the stands, and still a lot of the court and setup being polished, right? It wasn't totally complete nearly on Friday. So, but seeing in that work in progress and starting to put the pieces together and envision what Sunday was going to look like, what was the reaction from you and the squad?
Yeah, I mean, lots of holy expletives. No, I mean, like, it was, I think everyone was just taken aback by just how cool it looked, and right away, even when it wasn't set up, and even without the people, it had that, like, special feel. How, like, historic stadiums like a Lambeau, or it has this, like, aura to it.
Yes,
I think the Dome has that, and I was really curious how that translates to what does it look like with the basketball floor down, and maybe because we're basketball people, maybe because we knew what was coming in the future of the weekend, but right away it just had that, like, that feel that you can't really put into words other than holy expletive. And our guys right away, like, that was when they went from two cool college kids to what I wanted, which was the 12-year-old versions of themselves just having a blast playing the sport they love in a really cool environment. And it almost flipped. Like, they went from, whatever, it's not that big a deal, to like, oh no, this is cool, this is a big deal, and I'm going to enjoy it. And I was happy that happened, but that was really the moment when, to me, I saw that change in them.
And I get that as the college athlete perspective, especially playing a top opponent like Michigan State. A lot of those guys probably don't want to get caught up in the feeling of being a fan so
Yeah.
to speak, right?
Yep.
Because, growing up, you do idolize a lot of those guys that play at that level. And honestly, a lot of guys who play for Coach Izzo at Michigan State, you idolize those guys. And so now to be playing them, you don't necessarily want to think of them as these people on pedestals because at the end of the day, they are just humans.
Yep.
And so I do totally get like not wanting to be a fan, maybe downplaying the event a little bit as just a kind of a way to, get yourself motivated. But you can only do that for so long. And I think, eventually it does hit them. And for you, that switch, you get the practice done, and now it's like, okay, things are starting to be on track. Things are starting to progress towards Sunday. Ultimately, tied in with that, you have the Black Rocks kickoff event that night. And I'd imagine, hopefully, that was a good night for you to kind of unwind and get yourself set up for the weekend.
Yeah, I was, I was bouncing back and forth doing a few things. I, met Michigan State over at the hotel, so I wasn't there for the entirety of that. But I will say of all the special moments, one of them was having all of these basketball alumni back. And that night, I know most of them, but there were a lot of guys I didn't know. And one of my favorite parts was watching the interactions of, I might have played with you, and you might have played with him, but I never met him. So you're the linkage between, and we both played together, and you and him played together. So we're all have these shared things besides just playing basketball at Northern.
Yeah.
But we didn't know each other yet. And then all of a sudden we hit it off. And seeing all those cool, interactions that wouldn't have happened if we wouldn't have been able to, bring everybody back for this.
Yeah.
That was really, really special. And it started that night. Again, the buzz, the feel, that kind of really felt like the kickoff to it all. And from Friday night on, it just kind of rolled. But that really, the practice followed by that was like the right feeling of, okay, we're doing this, and we're doing this in a big way, and it's going to turn out really well.
And you talked about that rolling. That was the feeling. Now it's like boom, boom, boom. Everything else feels pretty blocked out, scheduled out, like everything has to progress as planned. You go into Saturday morning at the Beacon House, which is a really cool tie-in, obviously, with Izzo's involvement, with Mariucci and his involvement, what he's done over there is really special. Michigan State pulls up. It feels like they're rolling 200 deep when they get off the bus. And this place, I don't know if has ever had that amount of people inside of there, but again, those moments really neat going down and having breakfast with those guys, talk about that experience and just being able to sit around them in a more, a little bit more of a casual setting. There's cameras around you guys the entire weekend, but it felt like that might have been one of the more down times, so to speak.
Yeah. No, I thought that was really, it ended up, again, like a lot of these things, I hate to use the word perfect, but I wouldn't change anything for almost the whole weekend. That was like that perfect intro where it was casual, and our guys got to talk to their guys. Coaches got to interact with each other. Their coaches sat at tables with our players, which I thought was a really nice gesture. Got to know our players better.
That's cool, yeah.
I thought one of the takeaways kind of on that individual brilliance piece, the Michigan State group, like you said, it felt like they're 100 deep. They couldn't have been nicer people. And it's not like that fake. They weren't polite. I mean, they were polite, but it wasn't that. They were genuinely curious and asked the right questions and wanted to know things. And I felt like I just learned so much about just how to interact from not just their coaches, but their players. I thought were, so first class. And we have a really good group. And it felt like once they kind of saw how Michigan State was handling it, then our guys got to just become themselves. And so now our guys are interacting in a way where they're, telling their stories. And, it just kind of led this really surreal, awesome experience that I don't know how many times you get in sports where you get to interact with another team, forget that they're Michigan State, but any team in a way where you're really getting to know people and hear their stories and realize how much you have in common.
Yeah, and connected over a kind of a universal deal in that the jersey retirement, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I think that's worth noting. Michigan State comes in and they very easily could have been, with their stature and kind of what they imposed, they could have come in and just said, okay, this is how we're doing things and it will be X, Y, Z, and lay it all out. Instead, like you said, they were curious and they deferred to us for different reasons across the board. And they didn't necessarily have to do that, and it wasn't just a courtesy. It didn't feel like a courtesy thing of them to do. They genuinely were curious, and they wanted to input and those kind of things. And that's what makes an event like this very special, I think, is when you have two parties like that that genuinely I felt like looking out for each other. And it is nice when you have such a common goal and a common denominator in Izzo and the retiring the jersey. But moving on to practice that day, you guys get into the practice after Michigan State, correct? And that place, that might have been the most crowded, closed practice I've seen in my life. But nonetheless, it was really neat to see those guys out on the floor, to get their impressions of the setup. Originally, I know we got a couple shots of Coach Comley and Izzo out at center court, which was really sweet. Talk about that, and then back-to-back coming to practice there and just, getting your feet wet. Obviously, you were there on Friday, but getting that second practice in.
Yeah. I thought, it was, I wanted to stay and watch the practice. And then I realized that'd probably be a little weird, seeing as we are playing a game against them. But, no, I just wanted to see how they practiced. It was kind of fun. And I was in the crowd and they're warming up. I'm like, I wish I could stay for this. But no, it was, it was, again, just a continuation of all the cool moments. I was shocked by how blown away they were. Yeah. Like, I expected them to be like, we play in Big Ten arenas all the time. That was the opposite. They were like, this is awesome.
Agreed,
I think, Richardson said, my dad played in Final Fours, and this is kind of feels like a Final Four. I mean, like the stuff like that. I mean, that was when I knew that we hit it out of the park in a non-biased way, because I was so excited, but it was seeing the shared excitement that everyone had that made me know, okay, this is going to not only translate to Michigan State, but it's going to translate to the 11,500 people and all the people on TV as well.
Yeah, and you get the chance to talk about connecting with some of those alumni earlier on. You get the chance to meet up with some of them, have your guys interact with them, which is a neat piece, obviously, in tying this all together. And then we have the dinner on Saturday night where the jersey is actually being retired and a lot of the ceremonial portions of that inside the Northern Center. Did you get some downtime between practice and the dinner, or was this really just it was back and forth?
It was go. Yeah, it was go. So we did the practice, and then another cool moment was we brought Coach Izzo back to the new Vandeman Arena.
Yes,
and showed him the actual jersey on the wall before we had the dinner. And their team was there for that. All of our alumni base was there for that. And we kind of fed from that to practice over to the dinner. But again, I thought it felt like a moment where, as a basketball program, Northern's been really good for a long time, which I think people here don't even realize. And then there was about 20 years of less good. But before that, there was 4 losing seasons in like 50 years or something.
Yeah, it's hard
and
to do.
So all these people that were part of that, they've been wanting a chance to get back to that. And it felt like, all of our recent success is great, but this event coming when it did, it felt like that really connected that group of people in a way that I hoped for, but I wasn't sure if it would happen. And it just felt like, boom, done.
You can't script that.
We got everyone together. Everyone's happy. You get all these people from different eras, and everyone clicked. It's like when you see high school or college friends you haven't seen in a while. That's what it felt like with this whole group. And then our guys got to watch that, and again, they were even blown away by it. So there wasn't a lot of downtime heading into dinner, but it was stuff that, again, I wouldn't trade. It was perfect.
Yeah. And then your favorite part, speaking at the podium in front of a packed Northern Center.
Yeah, my public speaking skills. This stuff I've always felt semi-comfortable with. Yeah. But the public speaking, starting with breakfast, then the Northern Center, then the mic thing, which is a whole nother story. But
a lot of reps in.
Yeah, a lot of reps. And then they decided to put me with a bunch of amateurs. I mean, it was the president of Michigan State, Brock, Rick, athletic director at Michigan State, Izzo, Bill Rafferty, and Lisa Bynington. I mean, I'm like, all right, guys, come on. Like, really? I have to talk? But
sneak onto the roster?
Yeah, I was like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But no, it was great. And again, it's like everything else from the weekend. I wouldn't ever have that opportunity in a normal setting to get to work on that skill.
Yeah,
and
true.
I think the storyline of the weekend for us, all of us, was we all got to do some stuff on a platform that maybe we haven't gotten a chance to do before. And, we all want to, at some point, you want to be on as big a platform as possible. And, whether it was kind of like ready or not, here it is. And you had to do it. So, I think a lot of people did a better job than maybe they thought they would do in those moments because you had to.
No, I agree with that 100%. And, we have the video from the dinner, so if you want to do some tape evaluation, we're going to pull that up and
I'm good. I hate my own voice, and I hate my own face probably even more than my own voice. So I'll pass, but I'll take some notes from you as the creative expert.
No, absolutely not. No critique. So you were authentically yourself, and you can't trade that for anything. And you got some good crowd pops in there too, which was that always helps to get things going. And we talked about the Blackhawks, the kickoff event, and that was obviously a scheduled ordeal. Get everyone out there, have this big promo, especially with kind of their split, with allegiance there with the ownership and that kind of thing. But then Saturday night, a more organic version of that, of people coming out and being around each other in that much more casual setting where I wasn't there, but I'd imagine there's not cameras around you 24/7. There's not an audio boom microphone hanging in front of each conversation or a long lens, staring right into you. What was that like? I have to imagine, you talk about memories early on and walking into the Dome and the turf fiasco and those kind of things. I have to imagine that Saturday night leading up to the game has to be kind of a podium level memory.
Yeah, and I think the difference between Friday and Saturday that's so cool is Friday was Michigan State people talking to Michigan State people and Northern people talking to Northern people.
Of course.
Now you mix everyone up for a day and you do all these things. Now it's Michigan State people talking to Northern people and Northern people with Michigan State people. And the organic ability of that to just happen in a way that didn't feel forced or didn't feel like, breakfast, it was a little intentional to mix us up. By now it's just, different people talking to different people, and that curiosity component kind of kept coming back. And the whole weekend I learned a lot, but Saturday night you're getting to just talk to people and so many different varieties of, whether it's, booster groups or administration or coaches or fans or, just these different groups. I got to talk to Coach Izzo's family a bunch. That was really interesting. And all these like shared connections, once you start going, like, a lot of people are still Michigan people, still a lot of UP people, and all of a sudden you're going, oh, I know that guy, you know that guy. Like, great, let's talk about it. Yeah. And that was really cool and special, and not something I maybe anticipated happening, but it really worked.
Finally then, game day, Sunday, how early did you walk into the Dome, or at least over near the locker room and the offices?
Yeah, so we had 9 o'clock shoot around.
Okay.
And normally I show up to shoot around and then I go home. I was like, I'm not going to I might not have time to go home, but more importantly, I'm not missing a second of any of this.
Absolutely.
So I got here pretty early, walked down. I tried to pre-plan everything even more so than we normally would, knowing that the game day could go in different directions, and I wanted to have the flexibility to go in whatever direction I needed to. But, we had shoot around. We had a ton of recruits up, which was cool,
Same.
But it also added to some of the busyness. We did the shoot around. That went fine. Everybody else went back. And a selfish fun for me was from 10 until the game, I just kind of hung out, did a bunch of different cool things, walked around, and everyone said, like, soak it in. Like, that was what the advice I kept getting.
How do you do that? Right.
And I was always worried that I wouldn't, and it was the opposite. I just was, every second I was just trying to take it all in. Every time I talked to our team, I gave them the same piece of advice, like, just soak every ounce of this in and use it as energy that comes out when the ball gets thrown up.
Yeah.
And I can't believe like how well we did that. I hope we can now do that. And that's what we should do all the time. Road trips. We should try to have more fun on road trips. Why not? But then soak in that fun and then let it explode the moment the ball's thrown up. So
that's interesting. Yeah, I like that.
I really did enjoy it all.
And we caught you on the way out to the lines, right? And you were going, I think, just to talk about that curious note again, right? Like, we talked about this before. This is something that we identified was most likely going to happen. But then in the back of our head, we're like, this is really? Like really? And I mean, the short answer is yes. That thing was wrapped all the way over to the berry. And going out there and just catching you for a brief moment was really neat to see your reaction. Talk me through that and that visual, literally just the visual of people lined up for blocks to get into the Dome.
Yeah, I think, if we ever get chances to have those special things, I really think overall coaches, especially players, are better than coaches, but everyone's way too cool. Like what are we doing? We're coaching a sport where you chuck a ball at a hoop. It's not like we're not curing cancer. Like, so when you get those special moments, when you get thousands of people lined up, if you don't think that's cool, you probably have a little warped sense of self that you shouldn't be coaching. You should be doing something else, because you have to enjoy that, and you have to recognize how special it is. And I was curious. I was going to go peek at a line. And so I walked to a door in the back, actually peeked at a line, and it went longer than I could see. And I'm like, all right, I need to go out there. So I walked outside, and it's raining, of course. So,
and that factors into it too. Like, we have this kind of turnout and these many people that are waiting in terrible weather.
Weather.
Yeah.
Yes. Awful weather. So I walked around the whole building. I walked through the line that was wrapped all the way around, back to the Barry. There were people yelling. There was a couple Go Cat Go chants started. It was awesome. Then I walked behind. I actually saw your parents. They were some of the people I saw on the way, and everyone's just like happy. I mean, and that's before the game even. We're still 3 hours from tip, and everyone's standing in rain and happy. And it was, again, you talk about energy and just getting excited. If that doesn't make you excited or feel like you need to go deliver a performance, I don't know what would. For me, that's where motivation comes from, is seeing that many people that care. And so I loved that. And it was another one of those, I'll remember that just as much as I'll remember anything else.
We're starting to compile a good list here of the
I know.
top 10. I'm going to need like a graphic by the end of the pod. That'll be good. Now let's fast forward. The doors finally open. We opened them a little bit earlier just because, I mean, we couldn't have those people out there anymore. I mean, it was about time to just open the thing up, get it going. Now you're starting to see the people just fill this place up. Now, did you get any kind of, to go out there and see, okay, now it's like about a quarter and a third and a half full, whatever, and then it built up? Or was it, okay, you tucked into the locker room, had the guys going, came back out, and boom, here we go, standing room only type of deal?
Yeah, I normally I would do different things. I just stayed out there the whole time.
You did? Okay.
I wrote up our stuff on the board early, so I could be out there for the whole thing, and I watched it come out. I went and talked to my family. I talked to a couple of our players' families. I rescued the Keel family from the rain. I saw them sitting out there. I figured, their son's been pretty good. We probably need to, get them inside. And so I got a brief moment with them of them getting to see it right before everybody else came in, and just all these special like one-on-one interactions that I got to have with all these different people that were excited, and then with that you could just slowly see it filling and filling and filling, and it really wasn't that slow. It became apparent pretty quick there wasn't going to be an empty seat to be had, and it again went beyond what I thought it would be as far as visually with people in it.
Opening tip now. We have the run out, we got the pyro, the sparks. You guys run out to this incredible arena. You get just an incredible response from the people in there. You go through the introductions, the actual tip off. What are the emotions like through that? What was the pregame? And I know you guys had talked obviously a lot leading up to this point, but do you remember those moments, that kind of initial pregame huddle and leading up directly to the tip?
Yeah, I remember being really relaxed, and I don't know if we played like it, but I thought our guys were pretty relaxed.
Yeah.
I think the messaging was so simple. Like the only thing you can do wrong is not enjoy it or not play hard.
Yeah.
Everything else is good. Just play hard and enjoy it. And I think they really did. And they just seemed like they were looking around, but not in like a dazed way. Like more like, okay, we got this. This is fun. This is cool. Right before tip, ball's about to be thrown up, and I turned to Keel and I said, "Hey, is this what a Final Four feels like?" Because it just felt so awesome. And he goes, "Why don't you ask him?" and pointed over to his own. I almost did, and then I'm like, hey, coach, is this what a Final Four feels like? 'Cause this is what I think it feels like. So
that's cool.
It was, and it delivered all the visuals and the pop of, everything we kind of thought it would be.
And you had talked about being on the bench, being separated from Izzo by, 40 feet right there. And just being opposite of that presence, obviously, is such a unique deal. And you look over and he's eyeing you down, but in a very different way maybe than your typical opponent, right? And you know, maybe endearing is not the right way, but you know, in that kind of sense, talk about, you know, sharing the floor with him and his guys, and just having such a unique character up here in the Dome for that kind of event.
Yeah, one thing that I've actually had this conversation with a bunch of people that are in sports but not basketball coaches, is head coaching a basketball game is such a unique thing, because you and the opposing coach, you're standing, you're on the floor, but you're not on the floor, and you really are like with each other. Yeah. The distance between is even less than that if you're both on the edge of your coaching box. You feel like neither of you are on the floor, but neither of you are on the bench either, because you're standing and walking. And I think it's why you develop such strong, you know, feelings towards other coaches. It's why you see a lot of, you know, coaches that have these intense rivalries where they don't like each other. But it's also why some of the guys in our league, and even more so like the Ferris State coach, every game we have against them is a war, and we're both, you know, screaming at refs and competing. We have like this special friendship that I don't think I could have with anyone else, because he's been a part of absolutely the best and worst moments of my life. And I've been a part of, maybe not his best, he won a national title, but recently the best moments and the worst moments of his life. I've ruined their season. They've ruined our season. We've made our season against them. They've made their season against us. And that bond you form.
You're sharing, though, like it or not, you're sharing those moments. Yeah.
And you have so many things that you know about the other person, and the respect of like the competition and the equal competitor that, you know, you see in the other person across from you. Now, one game in an exhibition against Tom Izzo, I don't feel that same way. Yeah. But I did feel like for that little segment of time, we could take as many pictures as we wanted to together. We could do as many of the TV things that we did do. But that getting to actually coach against him was really cool. That's sweet. I remember one point I'm screaming at our guys like, compete. Like, I thought we were letting up a little bit, and I'm just like, keep playing hard, which usually I make fun of that as a coaching tactic, but in this case we just needed to keep going. And he was looking over there smiling and nodding, probably thinking to himself, yep, I've had to give that one quite often. So there was just those cool little micro moments within the game.
And one of those being the one that you really don't get in the GLIAC. You put the headset on, and you get to be on the broadcast, and his coach, he had his former high school coach there who took over, and of course put them in a zone, and he had mentioned that on the broadcast.
That's our guy. Yep.
Loved that. So you might have slipped some under the scorer's table for him before he got the headset on. But for you guys to have that moment, I thought was really unique, and such a exhibition unique type moment, right? Because that's not something that would ever happen during a regular season or postseason type game, but because the circumstances allow for this broadcast creatively to open up and explore some of these other interesting ventures, to have you guys both on the headset while the game is going on was such a cool deal. I mean, they had Mariucci on earlier in the game. We're seeing skits of the two of them in the dorm room. The fact that they pulled all this stuff off was really cool, but talk about from your perspective, we saw it on the broadcast, talk about your perspective, talking to the broadcast, having an even deeper sense of that relationship and kind of that, you know, where you guys are both on the court sharing that experience and still coaching and living in a basketball game right now and still being very much in the moment.
Yeah. When Steve Shear called me and said, hey, would you mind going on a headset during live game? And by the way, our color commentator is going to be Bill Rafferty. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, come on. Like, this is silliness now. Now we're like, are we making fun of me at this point? Like, yeah, of course. Pumped. Yeah, I'll do it. Sure. And then when he's like, and then we're going to have you come on and you and Coach Izzo are going to, I'm like, really? Like what would 10-year-old me say? Like, this is absurd. So, no. And then it was really weird. It was, but it was really cool. And the other thing with putting the headset on is it forced me to stop coaching for a minute. And it was a few of the times where I looked around the crowd and got to kind of soak that part in. And so now you're talking to all these people that you grow up idolizing, and you're getting to do it during the live game. It was surreal. And I think it's the second time it's ever been done. Rick Barnes and Izzo did it last year in the exhibition game. Okay. And then this was the second time that coaches have ever talked during live play.
That's cool.
That we know of. But yeah, it was and the creative component of this, like of all the stars this weekend, I thought Steve Shear was as impressive as anyone, who's the guy that produced the game.
Yep.
And getting to rewatch the game for me was like this whole different experience. So I got to experience it coaching it live.
Yeah.
But the rewatch was almost like a whole different experience.
I did the same thing.
And it was surreal.
I watched the entire broadcast from start to finish, and I think it was the night of or the night after. And it, like you said, it was like I was there for the first time, which is weird in a sense because obviously I was there. But being able to watch that through from that different lens was really cool. Well, that was a really neat deal. But we'll go to the end. Horn sounds. You guys have a great moment on the court post game. Obviously, both the teams get a chance to be around each other. One more time, and in what again felt like circumstantially a pretty organic way, like people were intermingling and having that chance to be together, and now you kind of have this shared experience that you can build off of. And I think watching the player interactions, not to backtrack, during the game was probably one of my favorite moments. Seeing those guys, whether it was just in the couple of seconds you have, not during like a media timeout because obviously you split up, but on an inbounds play or shooting free throws and guys are there, and there was kind of a playful back and forth, but also like you saw a lot of smiles and a lot of just really unique kind of interactions. You noticed some of those? Yeah,
for sure. I thought that was really cool, really unique. You see it every now and then if like two guys were friends going into it, but like for two teams to just have that where
no prior anything.
Yeah, and they're talking like, they're not talking smack, but they're like talking about the game. It's not like, hey man, like you're flopping. Nah, you're pushing me. And that, but like in a like fun, laughing way. I thought that was just cool. And credit to like their guys and our guys. I mean, because I think that says a lot about the character of both groups. Because it'd be really easy for one guy to ruin that nature, and no one did. Everyone just kind of embraced it, had fun with it, and I don't know if that's how sports should be played all the time, but
it's a nice little change.
I don't know. It's certainly refreshing. And then after the game ends, I said I wouldn't change anything. I would have thought about the fact that I might have to talk on a live microphone in front of 12,500 people. Luckily, I didn't think about that. No one told me. I thought I would go, thank you, everybody. Here's Coach Izzo.
Yeah.
And I look over, and he's on TV. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can talk for a minute. And then 2 minutes. I don't know. In my mind, it was like 7 hours. I do have one regret. I should have started Sweet Caroline and gotten
and that would have just rolled.
The whole dome singing Sweet Caroline, like we were at Flanagan's. That would have been. Then it would have been perfect. But short of my not being creative enough in the moment to do that, I thought the whole thing went perfectly.
No, for the record, I had no idea that you were unaware of that. So you pulled it off, because I don't believe anyone sat there and thought, holy cow, this guy is filibustering in front of the entire audience there. Kind of an interesting word, but I think actually appropriate for this kind of situation.
For sure appropriate, yeah.
And I didn't realize that. I don't think others did. I think you killed it, and you got some, you got some great people involved. You had a couple people on the hot mic during that. Obviously Dr. Tessman comes out there and, has his moment, and Izzo, of course. I mean, he has his messaging to close things out. But you finished that up. We go into a very sweaty B101, have some post-game pressers, kind of answer the questions. Was there a very gradual fade of all that adrenaline and emotion and feelings, or did that linger for quite some time after the game?
It lingered. I mean, I think after games it always lingers a little bit. Yeah. This one probably lingered a little bit longer. Went and hung out with a few more of the alumni. Got to see my family, which I hadn't at that point really had a time to see them yet. Yeah. So that was nice. I had, I want to say like 472 text messages. Jesus. I decided to leave those for Monday. I was like, this is overwhelming. No, it was surreal, and it didn't feel like sometimes, and I think people have said this to me, that it was going to end, and it would kind of feel like this. The end of stuff sometimes has this letdown to it. Yeah. And I feel that at the end of years always. Even when we have a great year, it ends and you're just kind of like, oh, that's it. Like, and you feel
especially where you guys have been, not to cut you
yeah.
off, but when you make back-to-back tournaments and you have great success in the regular season, and now these aspirations and these goals that are so attainable for these teams, it's very understandable to finally get there and maybe fall a step or two short.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. And I thought everyone kind of said, well, is it going to be weird to like be done and then just get right back to practice and right back to normal life and all that? I didn't feel that way, and I don't think our guys did either, which is good, but also surprised me a little bit. It really did feel like this was a kickoff and a standalone event that put a exclamation point on the end of our preseason, and it really did, even right away, it kind of felt like we did it. That was awesome. I wouldn't change anything. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life, and I'm glad everything that happened, but I'm also really excited to watch the 24-25 version of our basketball team have a normal Division II season in the GLIAC.
Yeah.
And I think maybe because it did go so well, it didn't feel like this was going to linger. It felt like done, bow on it, perfect, wouldn't change anything. Now we can move on.
And now after this, you can officially tie it up, right? But, talking through that, I think kind of to finish it off with you, what did you learn about yourself during that experience? And when I say that experience, yes, the 3 days, obviously that Friday through Sunday, but also the process going through it. What did you learn about yourself and your team? I think you mentioned the one big thing earlier about those emotions and soaking everything in and having fun, and then letting those explode on game day and using that in a sense, and maybe approaching that mentally from a different standpoint moving forward with road trips. I think that was kind of a unique point that I hadn't thought about. Even as an athlete perspective, I had never really thought about it in that light. That kind of stood out to me, but are there any other things you yourself personally as a coach or from a team standpoint you learned?
Yeah, I think we learned so many little things, and me and the players, and all the moment soaking in stuff, I think was probably, and the fact that we could do that and it didn't harm our ability to play hard.
Yeah.
I think that, was a unique thing, and I was curious of it. I didn't, we were using the word curious a lot, but because no one knew going into this weekend what it was going to be like, we had to be curious. If I would have stood up in front of our team and said, guys, I know exactly how this is going to feel, and I really have a great plan for how to handle playing Michigan State in the Dome, I think they would have correctly identified me as an idiot. So instead, we had to, as a group, go, we have no idea what this is going to be, but what we do know is it should be fun, and what we do know is we can play hard during the live segment of basketball. And I think in some ways, the more we can strip down being a basketball player or being a part of a team into simplistic things like enjoyment and great effort. And I think in some ways you almost go, well, what more is there than that? Like, what's the point of anything other than great effort, mentally and physically? You have to be mentally dialed in. Course, you can't just go hard, but go hard, mentally be dialed in, and then just try to enjoy everything you can. I think if we all approached basketball or our jobs or anything with those two things in mind as the most important and kind of let everything else happen, we probably would all be a lot more successful, a lot more happy, and probably oddly do a lot better job.
I like that. I like that a lot. Well, that's it. That is until 2027 with the Wildcat Carrier Classic when they pull in the USS something into the bay downtown.
Don't tell Michigan State. They might do it. So let's.
You think one of those would fit through the locks?
No. But again, don't tell Michigan State, or they might do it. They might find a way.
That'd be like one of the helicarriers. Maybe they get one of those going, get it up
the
there.
Ordoc, top of the Ordoc.
Oh my goodness.
No,
oh my goodness, that's incredible. But thank you very much, Coach. Yeah, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me. And it was an incredible weekend. I mean, from all accounts, you and I talked about it. The astonishing lack of negative feedback is something that I've yet to experience and may not ever experience again, given how confident and admittedly annoying people can be behind a keyboard.
Yeah, what's the like the Remember the Titans line? Like, I'm not saying any of us are perfect, but as a team, we're perfect.
Yeah.
That was kind of the summary of the weekend. Awesome. Like, none of the people involved were perfect.
Yeah.
But as a collective group, we did put on what amounted to a perfect event.